I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. This is round number 8 of the season, coming to you today from Zandvoort. My name is Ron Maunz, and alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Josh Wilkie. And now, Josh, we're slowly approaching the end of this season, with only 6 more races left to go from here. But before the drivers get to the final 5, they're going to have to deal with Zandvoort. This track has a fantastic ability to feel so old school, despite most of the back half of the circuit pretty much being designed and built back in the 90s, and the whole facility being pretty much entirely revamped back in 2020. It's still an awesome ride, though, and today is going to be some fun in my book. So, Josh, what are your thoughts heading into this race?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. So, Zandvoort's probably one of my favorite tracks out there for sure. This is just an old school, fast track. It's narrow, it's fast, it's up, it's down, it's windy. A total blast to drive, and I think the V's are going to be pretty interesting around here today, too. We do not really have a big draft area today. There is one down the front straight into T1, which is probably going to be your best passing opportunity around here, and really one of the only ones that you're not going to have to really, really work for. So I think we're going to have a pretty cool race today, Ron.
Oh, it is going to be a hoot. These Formula V's can put on a great race regardless of where they are, and we've seen that put on full display a lot throughout this season. Whether it be the first 2 races of the season at Oulton Park and VIR, where we had 2 drivers at the end of those 30-minute long races, covered by thousands of seconds in those 2 races, whether it be those 2 Mid-Ohio, which was just an all-and-out brawl, or other races like Navarra, Oschersleben, Rudskogen, and Summit Point 1 week ago, this season has been fantastically entertaining with some hard chargers, some drivers putting on some brilliant shows, and some really compelling championship fights all throughout as well. And Summit Point 1 week ago, which was actually, it feels like a little bit of an anniversary here with the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors on Slow Motion Broadcasting, just because 1 season ago, that was the first ever broadcast of this series here on SMB, and that was a pretty good race as well. It was won by Sam Chapman, the Australian, in that Spec 1 category. The Spec 1 driver was just so quick all throughout it, but sadly, I don't believe the Aussie is going to be joining us tonight. However, the driver that ended up winning in the Spec 2 category, I would be shocked to see if he's not out here, that being Parvinder Ladar, and I'm looking through, trying to see if Ladar is actually racing with us
Doesn't look like he's here today, Ron.
Oh, yeah, that would be a little bit of a shame, because Parvinder has been pretty fast all throughout the season, has a boatload of Spec 2 victories, and I'm pretty sure he's pretty comfortable in that championship standings in the Spec 2 category as well, off the back of multiple wins in that class. So looks like we got a little bit of a gap at this point, because I don't even see Thortulo out there. So looks like some drivers who we usually see as heavy hitters in this series deciding not to show up at Zandvoort.
So I think we do have Thor out there, but yeah, you're right. We are missing a couple people today. It looks like Sam's not here, and he was definitely the fast guy last weekend. For sure. We did have a bit of a hornet's nest last weekend, definitely there. It was a big race. 2 big crashes, one at the start, one at the end. Hopefully we can have a bit of a cleaner one today, but I guess we'll see how it's going to go.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's still got to be a pretty good race regardless. These Formula V's have been fantastically entertaining. And one thing to note as well all throughout this season is the wonderful level of participation that we've had. We got 25 race cars out there in this practice session that we're still in the midst of right now. 26 registered. Gary Wolbolt not saying a time at the moment. I'm not sure if he's going to be out there on the racetrack at any point throughout this race meeting, but still 25 racers out there ready to get things up and rolling for the 8th round of this championship. And I mentioned earlier that we don't have very long to go throughout this season, only 13 races long. We got some awesome tracks to look forward to: Indianapolis, Lime Rock, Lebanon, Laguna Seca, and Okayama to bring this season to a close. It has been fantastically entertaining, and probably the most entertaining storylines to follow throughout has certainly been some of the championship fights that we've had in the Spec 1 and the Spec 2 category. I'm curious, Josh, to pull up those championship standings to cover what has been some pretty compelling storylines all throughout the season. Always nice to keep tabs on championship fights. Thortulo in the Spec 1 category has been pretty dominant. You can see him above Jason Green. That would be, about around 70 points, 71 points, trying to do the quick math in my head. Don't fail me now, public school education. He's in front of Jason Green, though, regardless. A little bit of a gap between those two at the front of Spec 1. However, the fight for second is very much on between Green and Guido Marzucchi. Marzucchi has been very fast all throughout this season. We have seen him in some pretty good positions, but we do got some hard chargers, of course, 1 week ago with that win from Sam Chapman, kind of sticking his nose in a little bit in terms of that Spec 1 fight. But another driver who we see a little bit farther down, that being the 17th placed standings driver of Sean McQuillan, the Aussie. I don't believe he is racing here today. However, in the past 2 races that he's done in the series, he has been a little bit of a spoiler for that Spec 1 race win fight, so that could be a pretty good storyline to follow in the final 5 races of this season. I'm also curious to see how Stefan Heemskirk is going to finish off this season. He's 6 points behind Jim Brewster in 4th. And I'm curious where exactly he is going to finish when everything is said and done from this season. Started it off as a Spec 2 driver, moved on to Spec 1, and he has been incredibly entertaining to follow thus far. The Dutchman behind the wheel, the number 96 entry, he may try and grab a victory between now and the end of the season. Certainly has had the pace to do it. Gonna move on to Spec 2 now. Another pretty good championship fight. And Josh, how about you run through this?
Yeah, sure. So we got Jason Grider up there in first place with 349 points. David Fitzgerald in second with 336 points. Andrew Love, a staple of the Weekend Warriors there. I believe he actually won SRF in the Weekend Warriors last season, so always looking out for him to probably move forward. Matthias Martin we're looking at in fourth place here with 328 points. Michael Laturo in fifth place, 323 points. Parvinder Ladar, 319, tied with Nick Tulo at 319. Brian Straczynski, 307. Wayne Buttermore, 307 as well, tied again. And then Travis Rail down there in 10th. So we have a pretty close points battle there all the way through the top 10. This should be pretty interesting for the rest of the season, Ron.
Oh, it certainly is going to be, especially with a wide variety of racetracks that we're going to be visiting. Some draft-heavy tracks, some other tracks where these drivers are going to be more focused on just trying to maintain track position than they will be anything else. Lime Rock in 2 weeks, though, that is going to be absolutely insane. It played host to the season finale for last season here for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, broadcasted here exclusively on slow motion broadcasting, might I add. And that race was brilliant, with 2 cars pretty much coming across the line nose to nose, ramping up on top of each other after a brilliant race. And it was actually Chris Montgomery who ended up winning that as a Spec 2 driver. He's moved on to Spec 1 this season, and he's showing a lot of pace in this practice session, currently at the fastest time at a 157.479. But these practice results, can't really read too much into them just based off how draft heavy these cars can be, and considering that we have solo qualifying, can't really judge too much based on the practice results.
Yeah, that's right. Generally, it's just like F1 or anything else. you never really know, right? Are they out there showing all their cards? Are they going to get a draft, which is a great point. You can get a draft in a practice every once in a while, but chances are it's not going to be a very efficient one. So yeah, that's a good point, Ron. You can't really take too much into account here, and we'll have to wait for qualifying to see how it's really going to spread, but I almost guarantee you we're going to be nose to tail just like last week.
Yeah, nose to tail is really what the doctor is always ordering here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series. It is just, regardless of what track they're running at, they always seem to put on some sort of insane battle, and the packs that form towards the end of these races are absolutely insane. I feel like despite the fact that this track has a lot more turns than some of the other ones that we have run at, kind of gives me the same vibes as Summit Point just 1 week ago, Josh, because you got this long start-finish straightaway, and of course with the already line-diked curve of turn number 14, the last corner around this racetrack, heavily banked. These drivers going to be flat out, not even thinking of breathing on that brake pedal. That's going to give these drivers a little bit of a good overtaking opportunity heading down into turn number 1, and also trying to have some side-by-side battles towards the end of this race. We'll just have to wait and see how things are going to go, but I have a feeling that we're in store for a pretty good one. And even the sections where you're seeing a whole lot turning, like this, for instance, looking down, coming out of Hugenholtz Bend of turn number 3, that's a pretty good opportunity for these drivers to maybe get some moves done as well. So we've got a whole lot to keep our eyes out for in this race. I think as these drivers are hitting the track, I'm curious, Josh, I'm absolutely right on board with some of these drivers to see the wild ride that is Zandvoort. It is a brilliant circuit in the world of motor racing, a very storied one as well. And for quite some time, it was pretty much gone the way of the dodo bird for quite some time, leading up until really the end of the 90s, merging into the 2000s. The entire track was pretty much most of turn 1, and then there you can see right there the access road. You just pretty much get met with a concrete barrier if you try and go around. That section there, that small little hairpin leading straight into the Hans Ur chicane on the back end of the circuit, that was pretty much the only layout that was available of this track until probably about 1999, I would have to say, where the track went through a whole lot of renovations from turn 4 all the way up until turn number 10, the hairpin. All of this track was pretty much entirely brand new, so it brought this up in the open, Josh, about how this track still has that old school feel to it. I feel like this track is just a mastery of course design, giving it that old school flavor and old school feel despite it being a modern and wonderful motor racing edifice, and it's just a brilliant track to drive around and race around as well.
Yeah, I have to wholeheartedly agree with you there, Ron. Really, really good way to put it too as well. This place is just beautifully designed. It's an awesome track. It's genuinely just fun to drive. Even just get out and drive it on your own without other people around. It's a blast. The new iteration is definitely the track that Max Verstappen built. This is in its new iteration and got a giant influx of money because of how well he's doing, and that he is just a local hero, basically, obviously in Holland now. So pretty awesome track. Let's stay on board here with Jeff Jacobson for one lap and see if we can't see what kind of lines he's going to take and stuff here. This is definitely going to be the best spot to take a pass, and you want to get in really, really nice and close to this curb and get on the gas early. A lot of the sections on this course don't feel like they're super important, but every single one of them is. This is a very difficult corner right here. You don't want to go too wide through. Super unintuitive here. You'd think you want to dive down to the bottom, but you don't. You want to stay up at the top and sort of gravitron the top of it and actually let the car grab some grip. This part right here is probably one of the more fun sections of the track in a faster car. You come through here, I actually have a hard time believing that F1 cars still drive through here as fast as they do. It's absolutely wild. The walls are right there for you to catch. Really hard corner here as well, where you just want to try to not touch the brake at all and let the car just rip through it. You can see he didn't go all the way out to the edge, which I think is actually going to save him some time to not use the full length of the track. And we come in here as another pretty good little passing opportunity in here if you can get it just right. A little bit of a Mickey Mouse section of the track here. Not really my favorite spot. This is by far my least favorite corner right here. It's so hard to get it slowed down and get the rear end under you before you can get the power on, and then back out to this last section of the track that gets a little bit more technical than the first half. So you're coming into a big braking zone again. You have to have a big set of cojones to try to make a pass into here, and both drivers have to be very good to make it work. You want to rim the edge of that. Again, a sort of a gravitron corner that's actually helping you grab some grip. And then into this final corner here, you want to make sure that you get an amazing pull out of it for the really long straightaway, where you're probably going to have to get a draft on someone else to get a pass done, Ron. So couldn't have said it better myself. This place is designed so perfectly. I love it. I think we're going to have a great race today.
And you brought up a very good point in reference to turn 13. That is going to be so important for these drivers trying to get a good exit coming out of there. Don't want to touch the gravel, because otherwise you are going to be in for a very bad fate heading down into turn number 1. I'll have to run a stopwatch on some of these drivers to see how long they're spending flat out from the exit of turn 13 all the way through into the braking zone of turn number 1. But these drivers saying some lap times on the board. Nice for Brian Szynski to get up there onto the provisional pole very briefly. Still on the pole of the Spec 2 drivers at the moment, as some more drivers are saying some lap times on the board. Jason Green at the front now. Nate Coliseo, I apologize if I got that name pronunciation entirely out of whack. He's a newcomer, I believe, to this series, currently in the 2nd position in the number 8 car, right behind Jason Green, who is always a hard charger in this series. Has won in the past. He's a Weekend Warriors staple. So we'll have to see how the battle is going to look like between those two, not just in the race coming up, but the qualifying session as well. Still, these drivers out there on the track trying to do the best they can. The big thing with the solo qualifying session, don't have any draft help from anybody. You're just out there on the racetrack. It is the man and the machine, the woman and the machine. In the case of Michelle Lynn, who's currently qualified in 10th. You got the man or woman, the machine, and the racetrack, and you just got to try and have a little bit of a harmonious thing going on, a symbiotic relationship, whatever sort of phraseology you want to use, just to get as much speed as you can in these qualifying sessions. You can't rely on the draft, even though the draft is so important in these races. Jason Green at the front at the moment at a 157.588, which is actually not terribly far off the practice time that he set at a 157.503. Gotta say, in that practice session, an hour long, you don't really see too many cases in which all the drivers are out there on the racetrack at the exact point in time. Usually, in these Formula Vee Weekend Warriors races, the best lap times are set in the race session with some monster drafts, especially in the big packs that form. Stefan Heemskerk currently at the front. Now, despite the fact he has a green ticker next to his name, he is a Spec 1 driver, has been for the past few rounds, but he has not yet to grab a victory thus far this season, although he has grabbed some pole positions. Ultraslaven, a couple of weeks ago, he was starting on the front row with Thortullo. However, an unfortunate incident hang down into turn number 1 really ruined his chances of what was set to be a really good day for him. Jason Green now jumping in front of Heemskerk at a 157.482. There's Jason Green, currently qualified number 1 in the number 1 car. The smoke going up in the air, downshifting, banging through the gears to get through turn number 2. Turn 3, it was about a season ago here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, where a little bit of a disaster unfolded at the beginning of that race. I believe Wayne Buttermore was one of the drivers involved in that collision hang down into turn number 3. On lap 1 in a race like this, even with these Formula Vee race cars pretty much just being a gnat, stuff like that can happen. That can be a real tricky spot, especially if it happens at the very front of the field on lap 1 with a huge pack coming in tow. So I think turn 3, honestly, as much as turn 1 may be the opportunity where some drivers sneak a wheel down the inside, I feel like turn 3 may be the trouble spot on lap 1. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Ron. It's sort of just kind of all funnels at that point of the track. You sort of have a bit of a free air kind of until then, I guess. And then, yeah, I mean, the whole track is pretty tight, really. So they're really going to have to play ball with each other out there today. And we're in round 8. So hopefully now people have had a little bit of a chance to understand who's who and who's fast and who's not, and who's going to get in the way and who's not, and who's going to be a problem every corner and who's not, and so on. And they can learn to kind of play ball with each other, and we can have a good race, because we certainly don't want to miss shift and a crash at the beginning. And even though the crash at the end was pretty fun there, we don't really want to see giant crashes like that all the time, do we, Ron?
Well, I mean, for highlight material, it is kind of cool. Outside of that, these drivers certainly don't want any parts of that. Looking at an interesting tactic right now from Jason Green, running the wall heading through the Ari line-diked curve of turn number 14, trying to carry as much momentum as possible. He is on his 3rd and second to last qualifying lap now, clicking over to his final qualifying lap to try to get the best run that he possibly can off into turn number 1, sacrificing a little bit of time towards the end of that qualifying lap, but trying to set himself up to go for all-out glory in this qualifying session. Currently on that provisional pole, still a little bit under a tenth of a second between himself and his fellow front row sitter as it stands currently of Stefan Heemskerk, Chris Montgomery making it up to third as it stands at the moment. Simon Mayer, the German in the number 5 car, slipping his way up into fourth. We're going to see another interesting tactic that we may see bite a driver on the butt in the qualifying session and the race session as well. Look at the line that Jason Green runs, all 4 wheels on the other side, on the bad side of that white line, trying to use any sort of tactic that these drivers have up their sleeves to shave, even if it's a couple of feet off of their distance. I remember from my karting days having to carry as much momentum as possible, but also taking some shallow lines, because any sort of distance that you can shave off of your lap time is going to help you out a lot. Jason Green not really doing himself any favors, hanging through turn number 9, running a little bit wide through that corner. But it is very similar to a kart, this Formula V. It's like a slightly bigger kart, has about as much power as a shifter kart, weighs a little bit more, and scrapes about 100 miles an hour in the draft with the wind at their backs. But these Formula V's a momentum-based race car, so really seeing that nice tactic, that's really something that you occasionally see in some other series that run around Zandvoort, where it really gets put on full display with the Formula V's trying to shave as much distance off of this lap as they possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Jason Green is doing a masterclass here of hitting every mark that he possibly can, so let's see if he can't get a better time here. I am assuming he did. You were right, Ron. He did run that outside line coming out of here, and that was definitely to set up this lap. So let's see if he can't get a better one. I'm also a little bit interested that they're cutting that line going up the S's there too. They're cutting really deep into that off-road. Let's see what he does here. And that wasn't an improvement. So 1:57.482 is a great lap. Super fast. Unfortunately, he was not able to improve on it on that one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Just a small little bit of probably running wide through turn number 9 may have been what sealed his fate. That section, as you brought up in your track guide there, Josh, that is so tough to try and nail down. Usually the turn that bites me on the butt is turn number 10, the hairpin. That is such a hard corner to try and psych out because it's a little bit off camber. The track has fallen away from you. It's a blind corner as well. You really have to do laps on laps on laps around this racetrack to try and figure out when exactly you should turn in and when exactly you should drift out towards that outside curb. But one driver that seems like they're not really getting the groove of things around this racetrack is Thortulo. He was in the practice session earlier, however, he did not set a brilliant time in the midst of that. Looking through right now, trying to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th, 9th, 10th. 10th in the practice session earlier, currently qualified in 13th, and about a half a second off of the time that he set in practice earlier on. Thortulo is a real-life Formula V driver there in the UK, so he's pretty fast in this series. I mean, he's a championship leader in S1 for God's sake, so he's a very quick driver in this series, but showing a little bit of an unusual case for Thortulo, the fact he's qualifying a little bit lower. But again, these races can be quite hectic. You could start down in the mid-pack and end up winning it when everything is said and done. So certainly wouldn't rule out Tulo having a pretty good end to this qualifying session, or having a pretty good end to today, but it's a little bit surprising seeing him quite farther down the pack than we have seen him in the past.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ron. It may just be struggling out there, perhaps at an off track or two or something, but a good point you made there is, of course, that he does race these in real life, and having real life experience in racing and just knowing how to keep your, I think Brian Straczynski there was mentioning it last week, kind of just getting your mental game together. People who actually drive these things in real life, not saying that sim racers don't have it, but it's a little bit harder to come by, I think. It's a little easier when you actually race these cars and so on to have a bit more of a racy mind, let's call it. So I would imagine that he's going to do pretty well today, and he's going to be able to move forward just because of his because he's been around for so long and because he races these things in real life.
Oh, and here's a driver who hasn't been around too long in this series, Sam Chapman. We didn't think that he was actually going to be here with us, but he is. Currently qualified in 22nd, so we'll see what he can do on this lap. It's only his second lap in qualifying, so just saying a banker in, but the Australian coming across the line. Currently qualifying 22nd. Let's see where he jumps. Ooh. Only up to 16th, so Sam Chapman, another driver who was insanely quick at Summit Point just 1 week ago, not showing the same pace here at Zandvoort, which is a little bit surprising. I mean, it's a very different racetrack, do not get me wrong. You got some bank turns to deal with, a different level of elevation change for sure at Zandvoort compared to Summit Point. At the same time, Sam Chapman not really showing a whole lot of pace. Tulo not showing a whole lot of pace either. And Tulo's qualifying session is done. That was his fourth and final lap. Chapman, on the other hand, he's only halfway through his qualifying session, currently on his third lap as it stands at the moment. I gotta say one thing as well in reference to Tulo. going back through my collective memory, which usually fails me whenever anyone asks me what I had for dinner last night, so you can take this with however many grains of salt that you want. But Tulo, I feel like the only time we've really seen him struggle to this degree, was probably at Navarra earlier on in the season, like round 4 or 5. I forget what round number it was. But Navarra, we kind of saw Tulo struggle a little bit there. He was in the midst of a mid-pack, and then things went haywire for him at the very beginning of the race. But Tulo, very experienced. He's a very steady hand in this series. So I'm curious as to whether or not he is going to be able to put his nose to the grindstone, stay on it, and make a good result out of this when everything is said and done. Certainly has a big cushion in that championship standings situation, but certainly does not want to rely on that too much, especially with only 6 races to go. Sam Chapman's still out there on the racetrack, coming across the line a couple of moments' time for, despite the fact it's only his 3rd of 4 lap times allotted towards him, 3 of 4 laps allotted towards him, my apologies there. He's not going to be able to get that 4th lap in just based off the fact that we only have 15 seconds left on the clock. So Sam Chapman in the last breath attempt, will he be able to jump in front of Tulo, move his way up into 16th across the line? Now is an improvement from him. It is, but he doesn't improve on his position.
Huh, look at that. It looks like he actually tied his time on SDK there, so you don't see that very often. But yeah, I think you might be right, Ron. There's just, sometimes people just struggle with certain tracks. I'm trying to kind of go through my head here and see if there's, maybe a different or corner that's similar to Navarra that maybe Thor would be struggling with, but I can't really come up with it. So maybe it's just, they're just not used to this track today, but we're about to find out.
Yeah, it's very odd, the reason why Tulo is struggling. We may have to have a chat with him when everything is said and done to try and figure out exactly why. And just touching on a brief point that we mentioned earlier on in this broadcast, when I mentioned the fact that the track layout had been changed, it was back in 1998 when they massively reconfigured Zandvoort and added the section that you see right towards the top half of the lap. Well, we got a whole lot of laps in front of us. This 30-minute race is about to get underway in the not-too-distant future, and here is the starting grid. Jason Green going to be grabbing the pole position. Stefan Heemsker going to join him on the front row with less than a tenth of a second separating those 2 drivers in that qualifying session. Simon Mayer, the German, going to be starting this race in 3rd. Chris Montgomery going to join him on that 2nd row. Nate Colascio starting this race in the 5th position. The Italian of Guido Marzucchi going to start alongside Jeff Jacobson in 7th. Jim Brewster in 8th. Brian Szynski sang a brilliant qualifying lap in that S2 car. He's going to be starting this race in the 9th position. So that's a pretty good lap time for a Spec 2 driver to break his way up into the overall top 10. Alan DeGassis in 10th. Dylan Fernando going to be starting this race in 11th. Russell Telker going to join him on that 6th row. Looking through the rest of the drivers we have in the field, we have Thor Tulo, the championship leader, in 13th. Kurt Nunez in 14th. Jason Perry, the Brit, in P15. Sam Chapman, the Aussie, in P16. Brian Hansen in 17th. Michelle Lynn in 18th. Hank Mell in 19th. Matthias Marin in 20th. Dan Szynski, Jason Greider, Ken Poulin, Travis Rail, rounding out your top 24. And looking through the final few starters that we have in this race, we have Gary Wobold, Nick Tulo, David Fitzgerald, and Javier Rapules in the number 26 car, going to be starting this race in 28th. The final 2 starters of Fitzgerald and Rapules not setting a qualifying time, so we'll see if they will actually take to the grid to get this race underway. And before we grab the green, we should probably note that today's broadcast of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors on Slow Motion Broadcasting is brought to you today by Will at Steel Valley Vapors. Visit www.steelvalleyvapors.com to learn more and use code DOITFORDALE to get 15% off at checkout. I'll tell you what, Will's got some awesome taste in supporting such an excellent series, and it's also recently won an award, so congratulations, Will. But you can see, very fitting time that we mentioned that, just based off the amount of smoke coming off the back of the 2nd place starter's car of Stefan Heemskerk. Heemskerk has been mightily fast in this series. Hasn't gone to victory lane yet. Jason Green has, and Jason Green finds himself with a brilliant opportunity to try and close up that championship gap in the Spec 1 category between himself and Thor Tulo. Tulo starting at 13th, Green on the pole. Let's see how they finish off this race in about 30 minutes time. That green flag is in the air. The drivers are on their way. They have a very long run to get into turn number 1. Such a good overtaking opportunity, but you need to be on the defense as much as you need to be on the offense. Green getting off to a flyer, jumping in front of Stefan Heemskerk, who slips his way into 2nd. Look at some drivers going nearly 3 wide farther in the back. That's Jim Brewster locked steady in a very close fight with himself, Jeff Jacobson, and Guido Marzucchi heading through now into turn number 2. quickly approaching that trouble spot of turn 3. That was a section that I thought was going to catch at some drivers. Let's see if it does. Heading through there, nearly close to contact, I think a little bit farther in the back, but I think most of the field makes it through the third turn clean. Now going onto the back, not so straight away, all flat out, trying to shave as much distance off their lap time as possible, and some drivers even going 3 wide up the hill.
Absolutely, 3 wide around here is definitely ballsy, so really good on the drivers to keep her clean through there, and we're looking pretty good here on our first lap so far, Ron, without jinxing it too hard, and Jason Green looks like he is in full command of the race car today, so it's going to be a pretty interesting race, I think.
Yeah, Green having a fantastic start in this race, getting out to a comfortable lead. I say comfortable lead, not too comfortable in these cars. Looking at an off-track moment
Brewster.
and a beautiful save from Jim Brewster heading through turn number 10. Well done, Jim, but you can see contact being made.
We got
Jacobson around another car off the circuit. That's Thortulo going off the track. So flashback to Navarra a couple of weeks ago. Got involved in an incident towards the beginning of this race after a midfield start. So Tulo, the championship leader, already on the back foot. That's going to shoot him down outside of the top 20. A disastrous start for Tulo.
Yeah, unfortunate. We're going to have to go back in a replay there, but I think he just got caught up. It looked like Jim Brewster went super wide and through the grass, and then unfortunately it just didn't quite get her wound up enough and kind of shot back out on the track a little bit and caused some issues there, but we will have to take a look here in a minute when things calm down, and it's just unfortunate, yeah, that some people got shuffled out on the first lap there.
Yeah, that was a whole lot going on through the turn 9 and 10 section. Beautiful save from Brewster. Absolute disaster and heartbreak for Tulo. And look at that, some ballsy driving from Nate Coliseo in the number 8 car. That was some gutsy stuff from him. Hang down into turn number 1. Got to slip his way up into 4th. Nearly made a 3 wide with some threading the needle action between himself, Chris Montgomery, and Simon Mayer. But those drivers don't want to battle too hard. Oh, you can see a crash heading through turn number 1. Who is that going off the circuit? That's a Canadian of Matthias Marin in the 214 car. He is going off the circuit, so not sure what happened to Marin. Saw him stopped around. It looks like there's maybe a little bit of suspension damage on that race car. Looking at the front 2, Stefan Heemskirk applying a whole lot of pressure to the back of Green. You can see them taking that shortcut line up the hill on the inside of turn number 6. Heading down into turn number 7 and 8 now are these 2 drivers. I'm curious, Josh. We've seen in the past that occasionally you'll see the front 2 just pull away, drive into their own zip code, drive off into the sunset, whatever phrase you want to use. We've seen that happen in the past, but I've also seen some cases in which the front 2 haven't really worked together. They've started to battle, and as a result, one of those major packs, one of those major groups, a hornet's nest. Very good that you brought that up earlier on the broadcast. A hornet's nest in a Formula V race can form if the front 2 start to fight. And I'm curious, Josh, do you think we're going to see one of those hornet's nest races, or do you think Green and Heemskirk are going to try and work together to extend in front of those drivers behind them?
Yeah, well, you make a great point there, Ron. Obviously, if they battle each other too hard, then that's what's going to happen. I think this is a track actually where you can pull away. You are going to be fighting the track a lot. It's technical. This is a driver's track. There's going to be people out there that just don't have the lap time that other people have, and there's not as many drafting opportunities to catch back up and get back to and make up for those corners that you're just don't have the corner speed as the other driver. So as we're seeing right here, I think we're going to see these four or five guys here kind of start to pull away, but it really depends on whether Jason Green and Heemskirk going too wide into T1 battle each other and how well they do it.
Ooh, and look at Chris Montgomery nearly getting a move put on him by Nate Coliseo. That was some close stuff between those 2 drivers, but they get away with it fairly scot-free. And right as it began to look that Heemskirk and Green were going to work together, they said psych, and they're now battling hard with Heemskirk slipping his way up into the front. Ken Poulin also getting a move put on him by Tulo, who's now back on the up and up, running in the 16th position as it stands at the moment. However, that is not a position he wants to run in the slightest, especially so considering his main driver involved in that championship fight, his main competitor of Jason Green, is well farther up the road. Looking at a fight, though, a little bit farther up the road from Tulo is Michelle Lynn, currently in the midst of a battle with herself, Brian Stasinski, and Russell Telker. Stasinski ahead, Telker behind. Michelle Lynn at this point trying to wheel that thing around. She is the reigning 2-time Spec 2 champion. Moved into the Spec 1 category this season to give herself a whole lot of challenge. Gotta give her credit where credit's due. She is very fast. A driver who's raced in some Formula V's in the past. The driver of the 05 car running in the 14th position as it stands at the moment. But considering the hectic start to this race, she can very well break her way up into the top 10 if there's a little bit of drama that happens a little bit farther up the road, which, hey, it won't be the first time we've seen this thus far this season, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely part of the game out there. You want to just kind of keep her together, really, you know? If you can keep her together and get some kind of clean laps, you're probably going to do okay. And unfortunately, Michelle Lynn has actually fallen to some pretty bad luck, to be totally honest, in the last little while here. She's a really fast driver and has just kind of been getting tangled up with stuff that's happening around her on the track. So hoping for a good result today out of Michelle. And it looks like she's wheeling the car pretty good as well. So good stuff.
Yeah, keeping our fingers crossed that she is able to put on a good race. But speaking of putting on a good race, these drivers putting on a brilliant fight. Look at Heemskerk on the outside, Green on the inside, Montgomery now trying to wheel to get a move done on Coliseo to move his way up into second. Coliseo has been very fast and a pretty brilliant driver to follow thus far in this race. This is first race thus far this season. I'm not sure if it's his first race period in the Formula V Weekend Warriors world, but nevertheless, he is brilliantly fast at this point. That 8 car has been getting really racy with all the drivers around him, mainly Montgomery, but Montgomery trying to shuffle out Stefan Heemskerk, who now finds himself in the 4th position. And look at Coliseo riding on the back of that car, heading through into turn number 6. And you can see that car gets a little bit unsettled with that shortcut line. And that was a point that I was going to raise when we were riding on board with Jason Green earlier, and we saw him take that shallow line through that section. With that bump, I have a feeling that's going to catch at least one driver out, because as much as these Formula V race cars do have suspension, they're not very aero sensitive. They basically have no aerodynamics to them at all. So it's not going to get like aero loose or anything like that. You still don't want to hit that, because if you're side by side with a driver and it's a matter of inches separating you two, you hit that bump, get a little bit of a wiggle on, that's going to end in an airplane collision in a Formula V race. So as much as those drivers are using that line, I feel like they have to use it with a little bit of caution, considering how bumpy of a ride it is.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Ron. On the run up there while we were watching qualifying, I was actually a little bit surprised to see them cutting through there. I personally have never done that. I just figured it wasn't fast to do that, but in the V's, I guess it is. You're shortening the track a little bit, and as like you said, as long as you don't get kind of upset by that bump, you're probably gaining some time. But I really wouldn't be surprised to see somebody get a little huckabuck and end up in the wall off of it either. It does look a little bit risky. I will also have to push back slightly on the aerodynamics comment there. These cars do actually have aerodynamics. They don't have downforce. So this car actually, it's probably the most aerodynamic shape ever. It's shaped like a cigar, but zero downforce helping you out there.
Yeah, no downforce at all. No aerodynamics designed to give you more grip, just aerodynamics to make sure that these cars can slip through the air as best as they possibly can. The one driver that nearly slipped his way into the lead was Chris Montgomery, trying to get a move done on Green. We mentioned earlier on, Josh, about the fact that we were expecting either the front two to work together and pull away, or a pack to form. I guess they've answered the question for us, as coming up to about 8.5 minutes into this 30-minute long race, we got those major packs forming. Green, Montgomery, Coliseo, Heemskerk, and Mayer covered by about 0.7 of a second. And look at that aggressive line from Heemskerk, trying to shave as much distance off his lap time as he possibly can. He could see those bumps unsettling that car. I just get such an odd feeling looking at that, though, because I feel like it's going to end in disaster at some point in time. One driver that's had disaster sort of is Tula, running effectively in no man's land. One driver that started a little bit farther in the back, though, actually behind him, has gone off to a flyer. That being Sam Chapman, who I believe is lock steady in a close fight with himself and Dylan Fernando for P7 in this race. I think Alan DeGassis may have just had a spin. Yes, he did. And oh no, Michelle Lynn T-boning him. Oh, the commentators, Jinx gonna strike Michelle again.
Oh, I apologize, Michelle. I'm so sorry. Again, she's fallen to the wayside from, unfortunately, just a mistake that looked like it's completely out of her control there. So that's really too bad, Michelle. Unfortunately, I apologize for the commentators' jinx there. Hopefully next round will go a little better for you. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And I'm going to catch up with the Jim Brewster incident at the beginning of the race here as soon as we can. We're just action-packed.
I could just recognize that purple car coming out of the smoke and just T-boning. Oh, boy. It's... Oh, and you can see this from Coliseo trying to wheel it to the front. Look at this. He's on the inside line. Will he be able to do it in the number 8 car side by side with Green heading down into turn number 1? Coliseo on the inside line. Looks like he's going to be able to get it done. And look at Stefan Heemskerk now trying to wheel past Green. They're still going to be side by side through turn number 2. Coliseo, though, going to have the inside line off into turn number 2. Going to get that move done before they single file out off into 3. I say single file out. Look at Green trying to get a good exit. Wheeling pulling it and cutting it down the inside. It's going to be a drag race between those two, and Green is going to lose it with that much shallower line coming out of the corner. But look at that. Heemskerk and Montgomery now starting to fight. Montgomery was running in second. He's now running in the fourth position at the moment. Heemskerk is very aggressive in these races, and you can see Montgomery trying to return the favor side by side. Heading down into turn number 7. Montgomery going to get that move done in beautiful fashion on Stefan Heemskerk. Simon Mayer, the tail car of this fight, being like, hey, I don't want any parts of this. I'm going to be there as a spectator. It's kind of like going down the highway, seeing a traffic jam on the other side, and just seeing a multi-car pileup on the other side of the road. You just can't keep your eyes off it. I think Simon Mayer is probably expecting to see a multi-car pileup in the not-too-distant future. The drivers in front of him, they're very fast, they're very consistent, and they're brilliant to watch. But eventually, something's going to break if these drivers begin to battle as hard as they are between now and the end of this race. They've still got 19 minutes to go, and if these drivers continue to battle with the ferocity that they are, I feel like something's going to break here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. What a move from Chris Montgomery there. That was fantastic. So not easy to pass through there, and you do kind of have to have the car that you're passing play ball and know that you're there. But what a power move from Chris Montgomery there. That was just an awesome move. We're going to go on board with him here and see if we can't get a better look at it.
See him cutting down to that inside line. Heemskerk on the outside. It was just a move. Battle last late breakers. I would say fairly textbook stuff, but into a section like that where these Formula V race cars are on the edge of grip, that is gutsy. Speaking of gutsy, 3 wide heading down into turn number 1. Green Gang shuffled down to 4th. He may get shuffled down to 5th if Simon Mayer has anything to say about it. Colaseo Gang a move done to slip his way into the lead. Heemskerk in 2nd. Montgomery in 3rd. You can see the smoke going up in the air from these drivers downshifting it into turn number 2. But these drivers are putting on a brilliant fight. Nate Colaseo, though, has to be one of the best drivers to follow thus far in this race. It was originally going to be Sam Chapman, but I think Chapman has had a moment in time as he's now dropped down to 11, so not sure what happened to the Aussie, who was so impressive 1 week ago. He's an aggressive racer for sure, and may have bit a bit too much that he could chew not terribly long ago. That could be part of the reason why he's lost out on a little bit of time. But Colaseo, the driver of the number 8 car, so impressive, wheeling that thing. He's a Pied Piper as it stands at the moment, but I feel like everything on they go down the start-finish straightaway. They end up 3 wide into turn number 1, and a new driver ends up leading it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably going to be like that till the end of the race here as well. And yeah, the Chiquita Banana car is just flying out there today. So pretty awesome showing from Colaseo here as well. And really his competitors are just going to have to find a way to throw something at him here, because it looks like he's kind of got the day today. We're going to do a quick replay here, Jim Brewster, and see if we can't find out what happened at the beginning here. Get a better look. Ooh. It looks like, yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, I was going to say just close battling heading off into 9 and 10 through that section. Gets a little bit wiggly. That's just what happens.
Interesting. Yeah, okay, so actually in the beginning I thought that maybe Thor had been pushed wide here by Jim, but it wasn't. This was just solely between him and Jeff Jacobson right there. And, yep, unfortunately it looks like Jacobson just went a little bit wide. It looks like he was kind of trying to protect his line, and he lost it, and they tangled. Yeah, unfortunately, he got a big whack, but he got away with it, which is a little bit surprising.
A little bit surprising as well. I saw that nose cone pop off of that race car, and that just magically appeared back on. So maybe the nose cone of Tulo's Formula V race car acting more like a misshapen Lego than anything else. Looking at that 3 wide action down into turn number 1, the new leader, the new winner of the Formula V Weekend Warriors Lottery Bingo is Stefan Heemskerk. He's now in front of Chris Montgomery, who's in front of Nate Colaseo, who's in front of Green and Mayer, rounding at the top 5. Gotta say, they aren't really pulling away from Guido Marzuki, running in the 6th position as it stands at the moment. He's running effectively in no man's land. You can just barely see him in the back of shot. He's about 3 seconds farther up the road from Dylan Fernando in 7th, but about 4.5 seconds off of this pack. But look at Montgomery trying to strike while the iron is hot, hoping that lightning is going to strike twice for him. Went for that move earlier on Colaseo, tried to go for it on Heemskerk heading down into turn number 7. Just not close enough to get that move done though, but these drivers still battling hard. I think they're just setting themselves up to just leapfrog each other heading down that start-finish straightaway, which, considering that pretty much every other section of this racetrack, these drivers are turning at some point, feel like that's the only place to really get it done. You could try and go for a move heading down into the Maunz or chicane that these drivers are about to enter in a couple of moments' time, but I feel like you're just going to set yourself up for disaster, leading it, heading down that start-finish flat-out blast through the RE line dike turn of turn number 14, off down that start-finish straightaway. You're just going to be a sitting duck compared to the rest of the field. So that could be the reason why no one's really gone for a move like that yet. They may go for it on the last lap, though. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, totally. You know, it's one of those things, again, these V's, it's almost like the Molson Indy or something the Indianapolis 500 every time, or an oval race like that. You're waiting kind of to the end to really make a move. If you're smart as well, you're going to kind of wait. You're going to try to stay a bit line astern here up front, or at least play ball back and forth and do a little bit of, I'll draft you, you draft me, and try to get to the front. Although that looks not like what they're doing, Ron. They're 3 wide again.
Yeah, these drivers, I don't think they know what it means to just take it easy, take a chill pill, whatever sort of phrase you want to use. They are going balls to the wall 24/7. Montgomery trying to sweep around the outside of Coliseo. Not going to be successful, but he's still going to be side by side with him. Heading down into turn number 3, shipping it down the inside. He's not got a good exit, though. I think he is going to get railroaded. Look at Green contact coming out of the corner. Jason Green wheeling in that number 1 car, trying to shuffle Montgomery back. I thought Montgomery was just going to be a sitting duck, which in fairness he was, but that contact was big. I am shocked that that didn't end in an absolute disaster, but Montgomery now trying to wheel it down the inside off into turn number 7, trying to take P2 away from Green, and he gets it done successfully. Heemskerk also taking the big detour heading up the hill through turn number 6. Saw him just barely in the camera shot. He was just about as close to the grass as you could possibly dare in these races, but these drivers, they are playing with fire. There can be no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. That was, everybody right there. Huge props for holding her together, man. We got some good wheelmen out there, wheelmen and women out there for sure. And holding it together there was just awesome on Jason Green. I was convinced for sure he was going off right there, and he didn't. They all held it together. Even the driver beside him, I think, sort of noticed what was happening and backed out of her a little. And we all get to play another day. So good news.
Good news indeed for those drivers. They did not want any parts of any sort of major incident towards this section of the race. Just barely over the halfway mark. I say barely. We are barely over the halfway mark, about a minute and a half over the halfway mark to be a bit more precise. But these drivers have made this race feel like it's only been going on for about 2 minutes. It's been going on for 17 and a half, coming up to 18 minutes. But they're going 3 wide every single opportunity that they have. Montgomery, Coliseo, and Green 3 wide hang down into turn number 1. Look at Mayer also feeling race with Stefan Heemskerk. Montgomery going to clear Coliseo. Got to try and clear Green, but Green sweeping around the outside, trying to seal the deal in that fight with himself and Montgomery. They're still going to be side by side on corner exit down into turn number 2. Looks like Green going to be able to sweep around the outside and get that move done. Clear him heading into turn number 2. Not going to be side by side through 3 this time. I think Montgomery learned his lesson after that near disaster just 1 lap ago.
Yep, absolutely. Hopefully they learned a little bit of some lessons there going through that bowl corner. You can't really pass through there. We saw Jason Green actually earlier kind of take the low line, and for a split second it looks like, holy cow, you're way ahead, and then all of a sudden it all just goes away on exit. It just doesn't work out. So it's always better to kind of stay up high, stay in line, don't try to pass through that corner. It's just almost never going to work.
Yeah, I feel like there's only a few corners around this racetrack where you can realistically go for a move and not feel completely terrified as you're trying to get it done. I'd say, though, Simon Mayer getting a move done to slip his way past Stefan Heemskerk, so starting to see a little bit of bite from the driver, the number 5 car. Ooh, Heemskerk going off the track through turn number 10. I think he tried to wheel down the inside of Mayer. A last-second move, carrying a bit too much speed than he probably had in mind. He gets mega sideways, mega crossed up, and Heemskerk going to lose out on some ground. He is dangerously close to losing the draft as well, so unless Stefan Heemskerk has a brilliant run heading through the final few corners, he may fall into the crutches of this man, Guido Marzucchi, who I think is very happy at this point just to see a car somewhat close to him in his, just right in front of him, because it has been a while since he's had any sort of view like that. Looking at a view of a fight going on involving Dylan Fernando and Kurt Nunez. Fernando currently the leader in the Spec 2 category. Zazinski not getting a great start in this race. He's down in 12th as it stands at the moment. Fernando, on the other hand, making up 3 positions where he started in this race and battling hard. Speaking of battling hard, Coliseo, Montgomery, and Green 3 wide. Coliseo diving it down into turn number 1. Green may be able to clear Coliseo because that was incredibly deep off into the corner, but he has a brilliant exit, does Nate Coliseo. Trying to get that move done on Montgomery, but just not able to get it done on corner exits into turn number 2 and 3. I have a good feeling about Coliseo, though. I feel like if anyone is going to go for a move at a section of the racetrack where we usually wouldn't expect it, it's probably going to be him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually just really impressed with Montgomery today, too, as well. You were right, actually. That pass that he did into, it's actually a really scary place to do the pass, and he made it look very textbook. And he's been doing that kind of all day here, so pretty awesome. It's gonna be interesting to see if Coliseo actually has an answer for him, because it looks like Montgomery he's got the confidence today, and he's marched his way forward. It looks like we're gonna get a pretty good race out of these guys nearing the end here, I bet.
I think we've already gotten a brilliant race out of these drivers. I'm sure the final 10-ish minutes are going to be incredibly exciting as well. Looking at them battling through the turn number 9 and 10 section, haven't seen that thus far in this race. One thing that we haven't seen in a little while, though, this pack breaking up. Mayer has actually lost a little bit of time to the pack of Jason Green. Now it's about 9/10 of a second between those two, so Simon Mayer losing out on a little bit of time, dropping back to Heemskerk, maybe trying to help out Heemskerk. I mean, honestly, though, this pack is a little bit more conjoined than they were about a lap ago after that mistake from Heemskerk. Look at that, Green nearly trying to go for a move around the outside into turn number 13. I don't think so. Green, very fast driver in this series, very venerated as well, but around the outside moves into turn number 13. Usually end a disaster, and chances are he would have so little speed heading through this section that someone would blow his wing mirrors off as a result of it. But Green having a brilliant run, nearly coming to blows with Coliseo. That was near disaster between the two of them, hang down the start-finish straightaway, but it's not going to deter Montgomery. They're going to be side-by-side into turn number 10. Will it be Coliseo or will it be Montgomery? Will it even be Green as well? Coliseo not having a good run through turn number 1. Now Green is going to be side-by-side with the American behind the wheel, the number 8 car. They single file out off into turn number 2, but the fight is still very much on, involving a lot of these drivers, and that was a couple of more inches, and that will have just been a huge wreck at the front of the field, hang down the start-finish straightaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm just mind blown here that they're able to keep it together, and they've been keeping it together so long. They've touched each other. They've bonked wheels a little bit. I mean, there's slices of paper you couldn't fit in between these guys, almost every lap here, and they're doing just amazingly well. So great race, like you said, Ron. This has been fantastic so far, and I expect we're going to get some more fireworks here nearing the end.
We certainly will. This conclusion to this race is going to be insane. This whole race has been insane. This whole season has been fantastic to follow as well. I don't think we have had a dull moment at all, and certainly Zandvoort going to continue that streak. Looked like Green and Mayer were very briefly going to be side-by-side coming out of turn number 9. That is a section of the racetrack where, despite the fact it's a little bit of a pain in the butt, you can still get some moves done there if you're feeling particularly racy. But in these Formula V's, with the pace as close as it is, you really can't go for a move like that. Gotta say, though, a driver who's been catching my attention the past few laps is a driver that caught themselves from a spin about 2 laps ago. Heemskerk is still involved in this fight. He's clawed back that time. I think Mayer losing touch with the back of Green was actually an attempt to try and pull Stefan Heemskerk back into this fight. It's worked, though. It's now back to a 5-car fight, so I'm curious as to whether or not these drivers are going to be just battling hard. I still have a good feeling about Simon Mayer in all of this. He is a patient driver, to be sure, in the Weekend Warriors world. Would not be shocked in the slightest if he ends up winning it here at Zandvoort. 3 wide again, heading down into turn number 1. Green getting a big wiggle through the corner. I think he had to turn out of it to avoid contact with himself and Nate Coliseo. There's still going to be 3 wide coming out of the corner. And look at Stefan Heemskerk and Simon Mayer getting involved in this fight. Montgomery and Coliseo side by side, Heemskerk and Mayer side by side. Heemskerk taking a very shallow line through turn number 3. I think he's going to get chewed up and spat out coming out of the corner. There you can see the speed differential between those 2 cars. Mayer blowing Stefan Heemskerk's mirrors off coming out of the corner. Shows you how important it is having a good line through 3 as these drivers continue to fight, heading down into turn number 7.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned before there, it looks, I think, he didn't really have a choice there because he had a car up on his high side, but if you get stuck on that low side, it's always going to be a bad day for you exiting, and it just never really works. And we saw right there just how much time he actually did lose. It's pretty surprising, actually. So anytime you go through there, you definitely want to try to keep it line astern, like I was saying before. You don't really want to try to go down low. If somebody's beside you, it's better just to drop back and hang behind them and get a better exit.
Something that I've noticed thus far in this race, I don't mean this to be an attack, because the man is just brilliantly fast, and I think if he plays his cards right, he may very well end this season with a win or two, or maybe even more than two. He has shown a whole lot of speed. But I gotta say, Stefan Heemskerk, he can occasionally get a little bit lost in these races, if that makes sense. He'll occasionally go for a move that's really not a high percentage move, have a moment where he loses out on a whole lot of time. If he can iron out those mistakes, I think he is going to be a big championship threat come time for Season 1 of 2025. So I think, honestly, Stefan Heemskerk very fast. I think he just needs to hammer out those little mistakes, and he would just up himself up to a completely different level. Heemskerk has been fast, though, in this race, and I still wouldn't rule out him winning this race. Wouldn't rule out Montgomery or Mayer winning it either, but they're going side-by-side, heading down into turn number 1. Montgomery heavy on the brakes, hard on the brakes, dropping the anchors like they're going out of style down into turn number 1. Trying to get a move done now on Colacio coming out of the corner. Colacio going to have that good run. Montgomery going to have that inside line, though. They're going to be side-by-side. Colacio maybe going to have to concede this spot just to slide in back of Montgomery and slide in front of Simon Mayer. But looking now, Stefan Heemskerk trying to get a move done on Mayer. Not going to have any sort of draft help, though, heading down this flat-out section, so I'm not sure he'll be able to get that move done successfully down the straightaway. Maybe off into turn number 7, though. We'll just have to wait and see. But these drivers still battling hard. Less than 4 minutes to go in this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors race. I cannot, for the life of me, pin down who's going to win this. Could be Green, could be Montgomery, could be Colacio, could be Mayer, could be Stefan Heemskerk. I really cannot pin the tail on the donkey to see who's going to end up winning this race, because I think all of these drivers have something working for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ron. There's a pretty evenly matched group of drivers here, pretty evenly matched group of racers, and it's really anybody's game at the end here. Who's going to get that draft? Who's going to get the clean lap? Really what it comes down to is a game of errors. If somebody makes an error, that's going to be it, and it's that's about it. The people who don't make errors or make the least amount of errors from now till the end are probably going to do the best. That and decision making, of course, you have to know when to strike. Strike too early, somebody's going to draft you at the end. Strike too late, you don't make it to the end, or sorry, you don't make it to the line in front of them. So there's a lot to think about at this stage in the race about what you're going to do, what strategy you're going to take. Are you going to go for it? Are you going to sit and just get those points that you need? It's a lot on the line right now.
There's a lot on the line, but not a lot of time at all. Coming to 2 laps to go here from this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors race. Any of the drivers running in the top 5 can try and get this win if they play their cards right and don't go for a gutsy move 3 wide with Mayer, Colacio, and Heemskerk hanging off into turn number 1. Those drivers have been battling oh so hard. They have been the most, well, actually, outside of Mayer, who's really cranked up the aggression as of late. Oh man, a big crash heading through turn number 2. That's Montgomery going around. That's going to take him out of that fight. That'll turn it into a 4-car battle. Right as I was going to say that, Montgomery has really been the one who's been possibly the most aggressive outside of the likes of Colacio and Heemskerk. Montgomery going for a spin, hang through turn number 2. I think there may have been some contact that spun him around. Taking a look at a replay to see what happened to Chris Montgomery. He was running P2 at this point in time, right behind our still race leader of Jason Green. Looking at that, though, he was just over slow coming through the corner. Mayer having to check up, did not do so, and sending Montgomery around wasn't a mistake from him, just carrying not a lot of speed compared to his competitors. Montgomery backing it off a little bit, maybe trying to save his stuff for a brilliant run through turn number 3 to try and go for a move off into turn number 7. I mean, he did it earlier on in the race, maybe trying to set it up yet again. But there you can see from Mayer's perspective, Simon Mayer very lucky to not get caught up in that. That could have been an absolute disaster with himself and Nate Colacio heading through the corner. That was very close between those two on corner exit. But that was a big moment involving Montgomery, right as I was going to say, that of these 5, the ones that have been the most aggressive have really been Heemskerk, Colacio, and Montgomery. We could really just now turn into a 2-2 fight with Green and Mayer being the patient drivers, and Heemskerk and Colacio, who are still trading blows, mind you, this time hang through turn number 13. They've been the aggressive ones, but I think they're slowly losing touch with what they could do in this race. Jason Green is going to have a 1.2 second lead coming on the white flag this time by. So Stefan Heemskerk, Mayer, and Colacio clearly not working together, and I think this is going to be their downfall.
Yeah, definitely. That little incident there, unfortunately, kind of set these guys back a little bit, and now they're squabbling with each other, and it looks like Jason Green's just going to be able to run away with it. Really don't think Simon Mayer mean to do that at all. It just looked like either maybe a shift was missed or just a little bit of an overslow there, and it kind of caught him out and he bumped him. So unfortunate for those guys, but we'll keep racing here, and hopefully they can sort it out after the race.
And these drivers are going 3 wide coming at turn number 3. Look at that from Nate Colascio, the Chiquita banana car, making sure his competitors are trying to slip on a banana peel coming at turn number 3. That was a brilliant move from him. Very opportunistic as well, but will it stick between now and the checkered flag coming up in about 7 corners time? Mayer, the tail car of this fight with himself, Heemskerk, and Nate Colascio. Green, meanwhile, extending that gap to about 2 seconds between himself and the number 8 car of Nate Colascio. So I really think that's going to be Green's to lose unless he makes some sort of major mistake towards the end of this race, which, considering that he's a very fast driver, I don't think that's going to happen. I gotta say, in reference to the fight with himself and Thor Tulo in that Spec 1 championship, Tulo is looking to finish this race all the way down to 14th. Compared to Green on track to win it. That's going to be a big swing in the championship. But looking at this, 3 wide heading down into the Hans Ernst chicane for the final time. Mayer backing out of it, understandably so. He wants no parts of this madness going on with Heemskerk and Colascio trading blows like a pair of WWMMA fighters in the midst of all this. I'm not sure that WWMMA is a thing. WWE wrestlers trading blows. Yeah, we'll go with that. Oh boy. Anyways, looking at this, weaving, trying to break the slipstream even through a corner. This is what it's come down to, folks. Green is going to win it, but the fight between Heemskerk and Colascio is going to be the one that I have my eyes on side by side. Coming to line, who's it going to be? It's going to be Nate Colascio prevailing in all of that. Montgomery, Marzuki, and Mayer just went across the line 3 wide, separated by about 0.2 of a second when everything was said and done. Colascio and Heemskerk covered by a less than about 300ths of a second, really less than about 200ths of a second. Oh boy, these races are always absolutely ridiculous to follow. Sometimes I can't even believe what I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes. That was a brilliant race. Dylan Fernando, gotta say, finishing 9th, ends up being your Spec 2 winner here from this race. Edging out Brian Szynski, who finishes down in 11th, about 2 seconds farther down the road. Gotta say, also an incident maybe involving Jason Perry. He went off the circuit, possibly at the end of that race. Not sure what happened to him. May have gone off the track. And here's a replay to see what happened to the driver of the number 97 car. Getting through the Hans Ernst chicane. Oh no, that was contact with himself, and I believe...
let's try to roll that back.
That was the 295 car right in front of him of Dylan Fernando. Now, for the driver who ended up winning it in the Spec 2 category, it was a near disaster for the driver, the 295. Taking a look at this replay from the overhead, the slow motion broadcasting blimp down into the chicane, hits that curb, spins it around. That's it stopped. Tries to rejoin.
Bad rejoin.
Perry. You got to feel bad for Perry. That was a bad rejoin from Dylan Fernando. Certainly not making a friend in Jason Perry. Perry's usually pretty quick in this series, was involved in a fantastic finish with himself and Jason Green earlier on in the season, but sadly, it's like those two are going to be complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Perry running into trouble, which I believe results in him finishing all the way down in 24th. Green, meanwhile, going to win it. I'm preparing myself for whatever demons are going to be unleashed by Jason Green in a couple of moments' time. Those who haven't tuned into the Weekend Warriors series here on... Oh, no. Oh, please do not tell me he's going to be ramping up. As soon as I saw this, I had a... Yeah, there is some Formula Vee Olympics possibly going to go on. Anyone who's ever tuned into a Weekend Warriors broadcast here on SMB will know some of these drivers occasionally go for some absolutely ridiculous jumps. Jason Green's usually the one that goes for him. I have been reduced to the point of crying with laughter in the past from whatever sort of strange aerial acrobatics that Jason Green tries to attempt at the end of these races. He's going to win it. He wins this race. Is he going to win our hearts with a jump? You can see him. He's not coming down pit lane. He's going down that start-finish straightaway, banging through the gears. Is he even going to bother breaking into turn number 1? I don't believe he will. Oh, I see Michelle Lynn there. Michelle. Oh, boy, the ramping doesn't work. Oh, and look at that from Guido Marzuki coming in for the kill. Looking at this, though, there's Heemskerk. Oh, I think he just disappeared from my perspective. Oh, and there's Brian Szynski upside down. Where the hell is that? That's, I think, on the outskirts of turn number 7.
Well,
how the hell did he do that? There's
Hank Mealy upside down. We are having a wreck and race car fun here, as usual. Always a blast with the guys and girls out here to smash the race cars up at the end. One of my new favorite things, I think, actually, Ron.
I'm not sure if I feel like I should know this since I do some of those broadcasts. I'm not sure if you guys in the Spec Racing Ford still do that. Oh my God, who is that coming in for the kill on Michelle Lynn? I saw that in the corner of my eye. Michelle's still bouncing around. That car is ready for the scrap heap. The worst part is that's $16,000 on Auto Trader listed as slightly used. There's David Fitzgerald just getting a whack from, I'm not sure who that was. You can see those two cars bumping around. That is Travis Rail in the 284 car. Maybe circling around to try and hit our winner of Jason Green, who stopped there in the gravel. Did a little bit of sunbathing to celebrate his victory. Oh, and are we gonna see some? Oh boy, it's a jump, a little jump, but a jump regardless. Not sure what the hell happened to my voice there a couple of moments ago. That was the most shrill my voice has ever sounded on a broadcast here in SMB. And I think with that being said, we will finally run through the results before my voice finally gives out on this broadcast, because that would certainly not be ideal, considering I'll be on the call for the Formula Fords tomorrow here.
Always fun stuff.
Exclusively here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Jason Green, though, he ends up winning at 1.9 seconds in front of Nate Coliseo, who, despite the fact he ends up in second, not really involved in that fight with himself and Green towards the end of this race, he still put on a very good show, making up a couple of positions, 3 to be precise, but still is a very good show from him. Stefan Heemskerk going to finish right behind in third. Chris Montgomery, even after that spin in the later stages, he ends up finishing in fourth. Simon Mayer, maybe a little bit of comic justice as he ends up in sixth behind Guido Marzuki, who rounds out your top 5. Oh boy, what in the world happened there to my voice? Kurt Nunez in the 918 car going to finish in 7th. Sam Chapman finishing this race in 8th, and in doing so, picking up the actually tying in the hard charger category, ends up in 8th, started down in 16th, making up 8 spots there. You can do the math in your head. He's tied in that regard to a driver we'll be touching on in just a couple of moments' time. Dylan Fernando wins it in the Spec 2 category, finishing this race actually, oh boy, I think he picked up a drive-through penalty there. I was briefly looking at SDK, so that's the reason why I was going over it. He does not win in the Spec 2 category. Stasinski ends up winning it, so the incident limit's coming back to bite him on the butt. Instead, it's Russell Telker finishing this race in 9th. Brian Stasinski finishes in 10th and ends up winning in the Spec 2 category as a result of that penalty for Dylan Fernando. The SDK software usually good on me. First time it's failed me in about a year and a half, but nevertheless, Jim Brewster going to finish in 11th. Thor Tulo finishes in a somewhat disappointing 12th. I think there may have been another driver that picked up a penalty towards the end of this race just based off the fact that he was classed in, actually no, he was ending up getting classed in 13th as a result of that incident for Perry. So he ends up finishing this race in 12th as a result of that penalty for Fernando. Jeff Jacobson going to finish in 13th. Brian Hansen in 14th. Hank Mell in 15th position. Travis Rail in 16th. Dylan Fernando, who with that incident towards the end is going to be kicking himself that he doesn't win it in the Spec 2 category. He finishes this race in the 16th position. I said I was going to mention it, but I think I may have just glossed over it there. David Fitzgerald, who ends up finishing right behind the 18th place driver of Gary Wolbolt, he ties with Sam Chapman to pick up the Hard Charger Award, finishing this race in 19th when everything is said and done. So well done to David. Jason Grider going to finish in 20th. Dan Szynski in 21st. Alan DeGassis in 22nd. Michelle Lynn in 23rd. Jason Perry in 24th. Nick Tulo finishing this race in the 25th position. Then Ken Poulin, Matthias Marin, and Javier Rapules running into some difficulties. I do not believe Javier Rapules even took the start of this race. But those round out the results from this very exciting day of racing action from the Formula V weekend.
I'd just like to add a note there, Ron, quickly about the results here. We do actually have Russell Telker is actually classified as S1 here. He's actually S2, so he did get second place today in S2. Just wanted to add that.
Oh, there we go. So well done to Russell Telker, and commiserations to Brian Szynski, who ends up finishing this race. We thought he finished in second in the Spec 2 category, then we thought he won it. He actually finishes in P2 in the Spec 2 category, but nevertheless, got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area, and Josh, I feel like it will be fitting for you as a Spec 2 driver in the Formula Ford and the Spec Racer Ford Series to have a chat with our Formula V Spec 2 winner of Russell Telker.
Yeah, sure. Get him in here. Hey Russell, how's it going, man? It looks like you had a really good race out there today, and you were able to actually take second place in S2. So tell us how you felt.
Felt pretty good. I was kind of relaxed cruising along behind Brian and Michael there, and then Michael got wrecked. So Brian and I started running along until Sam Chapman caught up to us, and he kind of dragged us up back into the race a little bit there. Yeah, it went pretty good. Fairly clean. So just had a good time.
Excellent. Yeah, so
actually,
yeah, go ahead.
It looked like Dylan Fernando, I think the name was. Looks like he got DQ'd, so I think I'm actually Spec 1 winner.
Yeah, were you actually? Yeah, so we're going to have to look into that because he was kind of a new driver here as well. So, yeah, if you won today, Congratulations. We will sort that out in the end for sure. I think he got a penalty near the end there, so he actually got shuffled back. So it looks like you took second or maybe even possibly the win today. So did you get any practice in this week at all, or how did you practice up for this one? Do you know this track well, or?
I know the track pretty well. I ran it a bunch here in previous seasons in other cars. Last night was my first time with the Formula Vee on this track, just in our draft party we do Friday nights. But again, I know the track pretty well, and I'm starting to learn the car pretty well as well. So yeah, it kind of came together for me.
Excellent, man. Yeah, so we will get that classification all sorted out for you there for next round.
Sure.
So really, really good race today, Russell. We're happy to see you up at the front. And is there anybody you'd like to thank?
All the other guys in the league, everybody's so helpful in trying to figure out setups and what the fast line is, and the practice on Friday nights is huge. So that would be the crew I want to thank.
Excellent. Right on, man. Yeah, this is such a great crew out here, and really happy to hear that everybody's sharing setups and helping each other out to make it to the front, man. So really good to see you up at the front, Russell. You looking forward to next weekend?
I am, even though I'm not entirely sure what track we're at.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually drawing a blank for me right now, too. I think our buddy Ron here probably knows. So what's the next track we're going to, Ron?
It's going to be the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Oh, okay.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Is that one of your favorite tracks there, or not so much?
I have barely run that track. I think a couple of times in GT3 stuff. That was it. So
right.
We'll have to see how that goes.
Right on, man. Well, congratulations today, and we will see you next week, Russell. Good drive.
Thank you. Yep, bye.
And that right there was Russell Telker, who we believe is the winner in the Spec 2 category. We'll get that taken care of for future rounds in this series. But we are entirely sure that this driver is the Spec 1 winner. That being Jason Green, who's joining us now in the commentary booth. And now, Jason, all throughout that race, you were involved in an absolute hornet's nest, but he ended up coming out of all of that victorious. So talk us through what looked like a very hectic day in the office here at Zandvoort.
Oh my god, yeah, that was wild. It's 3 wide pretty much every time into turn 1. Yeah, just got lucky to be in front when something happened, and I was able to get enough of a gap to just kind of stay ahead. I was just watching it. I wanted to think that it was my draft management giving people the right draft at the right time to keep them side by side that made the difference, but it looks like it was just somebody, Simon, getting it wrong going into turn 3 and running into Chris, so that gave me the gap. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Didn't really expect to survive it, to be honest, but it ended up working out.
Well, at certain points all throughout that race, I was expecting most of you drivers to go off the track in a cloud of dust and steam with how hard y'all were battling, but overall, it was very clean, and I'm sure with the moves that he had to put on some of these drivers going 3 wide at many points all throughout it, was it really tough just trying to keep a calm and level head as you had to deal with all that chaos around you?
Yeah, I mean that's the name of the game, right? Is just to try to stay as calm as possible. So yeah, wasn't really too worried. Just trying to not think about crashing, just trying to keep track of where everybody else is and try to not crash into them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, keeping a calm and cool head is, I think, going to help you out a whole lot as your main championship rival in the Spec 1 category, that being Thortulo, ends up finishing this race down in 12th. So pretty good points day here as well. Good momentum in terms of that championship fight to entering the final 5 races this season?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, especially like the last, 3 or 4 rounds, I've haven't been really close to finishing even on the podium. So yeah, it's a good boost for me. I've been struggling past couple weeks and had some bad luck, so it's good to finally have some good luck this time around.
Well, you're going to be trading that falling anvil with a winner's trophy here at Zandvoort, and maybe gonna have to trade the trade some of the jumps with not doing a burnout over the bricks. I feel like we need to make that quite clear as the series rocks up to Indianapolis in 1 week's time. That's a very odd track in the world of racing. It's kind of like Marmite in a weird way, very unpopular. Some people either love it or absolutely despise it. So what camp are you in terms of that racetrack, and what are your thoughts heading into that race in 1 week's time?
Oh, I love that track. It's one of my favorites. It's one of the first tracks I was actually on pace in the SRF against like the aliens there. So yeah, it's kind of a favorite of mine. Even though it's kind of a track that I'm not really good at. And I'm trying to think. I don't know if there are any jumps there. I guess I'll have to go explore.
Yep, you have to find one.
But yeah, that'll be crazy. It'll be pretty much like a repeat of what we had today. Just it's a super wide track, lots of long straights that are probably a little too long for this car. So I'm sure we'll be, instead of 3 wide into turn 1, we might end up being 4 or 5 wide. So we'll have to see.
I feel like if I see some of the Formula V Weekend Warriors drivers going 5 wide off into turn number 1, especially on lap 1 at that race, I'm probably going to have a panic attack here in the commentary booth. And I gotta say one thing as well, with some of the killer curbs that you drivers are gonna have to deal with at that racetrack in 1 week's time, you may be able to hit one of those, kind of do a hop, skip, and a jump into the grass and maybe just lawn dart it in.
Oh, for sure.
I'm sure you're definitely going to get your practice both around the racetrack and trying to find a jump, but I am bracing myself for whatever sort of odd aerial acrobatics that we're going to be seeing there. But Jason, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth. Congratulations on the victory. And before we let you go and celebrate and have a chat with the Formula V drivers, as you usually do at the end of these races, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Shout out to Michelle, who gave me an awesome setup this time around. So yeah, that definitely helped me out a lot, especially in qualifying. And then just shout out to all 27 people I think we had today. Didn't think we would have that many since this is a paid track and it wasn't on the same as the FV official series. So it's awesome to have this many drivers at this track. So shout out to everybody.
Well, awesome, man. Hey, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth. Congratulations on the victory, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Let's go. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
And that right there was Jason Green, who ends up winning it in the Spec 1 category. And I gotta say, the results that 2 of those drivers had went to set us up for a pretty good championship fight to follow all throughout the final 5 races of this season. But Josh, gonna be running at Indianapolis. It's a track that some people love and others absolutely despise. So I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Jason a couple of moments ago. Are you in the love or the hate camp? And what are your thoughts heading into that race?
Yeah, you know, as a sim racer and a driver and a motorsports fan, I try my very best not to hate any tracks and try to make the ones that I hate into the ones I like. That being said, Indianapolis is not really one of my favorite tracks, but I don't hate it at all. Perhaps the V's, like Jason was saying, it might be a little bit wide and a little bit long. It's going to be pretty interesting to see just a bunch of drafting back and forth and everything, but really only time will tell. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those tracks, though, Ron. You either love it or hate it, and I kind of fit in the middle there somewhere with almost all tracks. I don't think there's a track out there that I do hate, to be honest.
Oh, Indianapolis is also probably one of the most historic tracks that we'll be visiting all throughout this season. The first ever race there was a hot air balloon race all the way back in 1909, which I think is a story that
really?
Just cannot have for any other racetrack that we'll be visiting throughout the final 5 races of this season. But Indianapolis, Lime Rock, Lebanon, Laguna Seca, and Okayama going to set us up for a fantastic close to this Formula V Weekend Warriors season. But I'll tell you what, we got a whole lot of action just coming up every single day here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. The action is coming at you thick and thin. Every single thick and fast, I should say. Thick and thin, that is a contradiction if ever I heard one. We've got a whole lot of action to look forward to here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Got the action with the other Weekend Warriors series, the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords running this upcoming weekend. The rest of the Formula V Weekend Warriors season every single Saturday here on SMB. And also round number 1 for Group 2 of the Ray Esports Club Racing League. That'll be 70 minutes of GT4 action coming at you. at Sebring in a couple of days' time, so a whole lot of action to keep our eyes out for at the moment. But I think for this broadcast here on SMB today, actually, nope. I need to remind myself. We need to also look at the upcoming broadcast.
There we go.
Pit Road Productions, a sister channel here to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and run through the slate of action that is always coming up there. We mentioned the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors that runs here on SMB. We got another Formula Ford series running over there every other Wednesday, and we also got some Radical SR10 action there as well. If you want to stay tuned to that action, remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell on Pit Road Productions so you never miss anything, and also do the same here to SMB so you never miss out on any of the Weekend Warriors and Ray Esports action. But I think finally, with all that taken care of, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Josh Wilkie working the comms and the cams with me on today's broadcast, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you
It
know,
is.
life sucks sometimes, and you need
Yes.
the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We welcome you all to Slow Motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.